A golden boy of the silver screen, his face was sculpted for teenage bedroom walls and studio lobby cards, with blonde hair that glistened like it had caught the California sun itself. He was supposed to be the clean-cut dream, the boy every mother approved of, and every girl whispered about in soda shops. But what the studio brass sold as innocence carried a private truth far riskier than box office flops or failed marriages. Behind the dazzling posters and surf scene romances lay midnight drives, unlisted bungalows, and coded calls that could shatter careers if overheard. Two other actors, both luminous in their own right, crossed paths with him in secret. Lovers bound not by contracts, but by shadows and silence. The price of discovery was ruin. The thrill was survival. Who risked everything? Who paid the price? Everything will be revealed in today's video. He did not come from privilege. Born into a middle-class East Coast household, the boy who would one day have his face plastered across photoplay covers grew up chasing stability as much as opportunity. School was never his stage. The streets, the parks, the whispered promise of somewhere bigger. That was the canvas for his restless energy. The break came almost by accident. A chance introduction through a drama coach, a photograph passed to a casting assistant, and suddenly he was on the West Coast. Hollywood in the 1950s was a studio fortress, a place where blonde hair and square jaws were minted into teenage hysteria. He fit the mold perfectly. A surfboard in hand, a convertible in the lot, a smile rehearsed to perfection. This was the life scripted for him. The studios wasted no time. Romantic melodramas, beach-themed pictures, and glossy supporting roles became his calling card. By the early 1960s, his name was synonymous with sun-drenched innocence. He was the boy parents allowed in their daughters' daydreams. But insiders knew there was more. According to one Paramount publicist, he never stayed long at the after-parties the studio arranged. His real life started once the spotlight dimmed. Whispers began almost immediately. Not loud, never in print, but murmured in the corners of Musso and Frank's, passed along by drivers and hairdressers. He wasn't just chasing co-stars in bikinis, no matter what the fan magazines said. There were other meetings, late-night meetings, carefully guarded connections that would never appear in the studio press releases. Two motifs became part of his private world and would resurface again and again. The first was a phone off its hook, the dial tone humming in the background after hurried conversations had to be cut short. The second was a simple gold ring, left on a dresser or slipped into a pocket, never quite claimed in daylight. To the public, he was the All-American. To those who knew, he was something else entirely. Jack Hunter. He meets him on a set thick with cigarette smoke and tension. The year is 1959, and the older man, let's call him Jack Hunter, a pseudonym insiders used, borrowed from crew lists and whispered in coded notes, is already known around town. He's rugged with a reputation for hard drinking and womanizing, the perfect mask for the truth he keeps locked away. The younger star, still fresh from his studio grooming, notices Jack immediately. There's a spark, not of rivalry, but of recognition. At a rap party, away from the photographers, they exchange a joke, then a cigarette, then something more dangerous. A second glance that lasts too long. How do you conduct an affair when the world watches your every move? The logistics were as intricate as any studio production. Separate cars leaving the lot, then circling back to a quiet bungalow in the hills. According to one Benedict Canyon houseman, the blonde poster boy always arrived with a scarf tied low over his face, headlights dimmed, heart pounding. There were no sleepovers, just hours that stretched into dawn, then vanished with the sound of an engine fading down Mulholland. The inciting incident comes one humid evening. A studio secretary, reportedly sent to drop off revised script pages, finds the younger actor's car parked outside Jack's hidden address. Nothing is said, but by the next morning, the whispers reach the lot. Suddenly, producers pull him aside. Be careful about your company. People talk. The words are light, but the threat beneath them is iron. Escalation arrives quickly. A confidential columnist makes an offhand remark in a draft. The surfer golden boy spends his nights in unusual company. And though the line is struck before publication, the damage is done. Studio fixers arrange a photo op. The blonde star dating a rising ingenue at Chasen's. Flashbulbs explode. A headline reads, Hollywood's hottest new couple. Behind the camera, he and Jack sit in silence, their eyes meeting only when no one is watching. The consequence is brutal. Jack, already fragile with his career, distances himself. The studio gives him a final warning. Keep your life clean or lose the roles. And just like that, the first fire burns out. But the memory of those midnight meetings, of the ring left once on a dresser by accident, never leaves him. One line captures the ending. They weren't caught, but they were cornered. And in Hollywood, that was enough. Michael Reed. If Jack Hunter was a hidden flame, Michael Reed, another pseudonym, borrowed from gossip columns and blurred studio records, was a dangerous mirror. He was closer in age, a luminous contract player whose own career rose on the same tide of glossy teen dramas. They were cast together once, though not as love interests. Their roles circled one another like planets sharing the same orbit. The attraction was immediate, but so was the danger. Unlike Jack, Michael was reckless. He craved the thrill of being seen, of pushing boundaries just far enough to feel the heat. According to whispers from a Warner Brothers production, Secretary Michael would call the blonde poster boy at odd hours, letting the phone ring 3 times before hanging up, a code that meant, drive out now. Their logistics were improvised. A borrowed car from a valet at the Macambo, a locked hotel suite registered under a stagehand's name, poolside encounters at dawn when the world was too sleepy to notice. At one party in Palm Springs, insiders later said, they disappeared for nearly an hour, returning separately but with the kind of flush that makeup couldn't explain. The inciting incident arrived in the form of jealousy. One night, Michael was spotted by a rival actor, a man with connections to columnists, slipping into a bungalow that the Golden Boy had just left. The sighting was whispered to Luella Parsons' staff, and though it never reached print, the studio phones lit up by morning. Executives didn't need proof. They needed control. Escalation came swift. The blonde actor was ordered to appear at the Coconut Grove with a well-known socialite on his arm. The photographs made it into every gossip magazine, but the captions screamed too loudly. The smiles looked too polished. Meanwhile, Michael bristled at being hidden, insisting that their bond was more than stolen hours. According to industry whispers, one heated argument nearly ended with a letter written and then torn apart, a confession that could have changed both their lives if it had survived. The consequence was devastating. Michael's career faltered. Roles dried up mysteriously after he began pressing for more. Some said it was coincidence. Others said it was punishment. For the blonde star, the lesson was seared into his life. Love in the shadows had to remain exactly that, or everything would collapse. The chapter closes with a line spoken once by an insider who claimed to have witnessed it. He looked at Michael like a reflection and hated himself for loving what he saw. Troy Donahue. And here finally the name emerges. The iron-jawed golden boy of gossip columns, the surfer icon of the early 1960s, the man studios sculpted into a dream only to discard when taste shifted. Troy Donahue. For years, Donahue embodied the perfect poster child of Warner Brothers. Tall, blonde, with a voice just gravelly enough to suggest depth. He was the romantic lead in A Summer Place 1959, the sun-kissed idol in beach romances, the kind of man photoplay called every girl's secret diary entry. To the public, he was straight from a jukebox fantasy. But behind the billboards, Donahue reportedly navigated the treacherous reality of being a gay or bisexual man in an era when exposure meant exile. The reveal is tied to his first major scandal. By the mid-1960s, after several high-profile studio romances ended in whispers and annulments, rumors began surfacing that Donahue's real life was not the one fans imagined. According to one Paramount contract clerk, letters came across desks that were signed only with initials, but everybody knew who they were, for Troy Donahue was both trapped and liberated by his looks. His fame gave him access to stars like Jack Hunter, to thrill-seekers like Michael Reed, but it also shackled him under morality clauses so rigid that one misstep could end him. Industry fixers placed him in staged romances. Confidential columns dangled hints, only to be retracted after a quiet phone call from a studio lawyer. Through it all, Donahue's own voice was largely silent. He could neither confirm nor deny. He could only play the role given to him. And yet, in private, those stolen nights became his real life. Midnight drives up Mulholland, quiet dinners where hands brushed under linen tablecloths, a ring left on a dresser, waiting to be reclaimed. These were the moments that mattered. But that was only the beginning. From this point, Donaghue's story becomes not just about who he loved, but what it cost him. Roles lost, reputations managed, a legacy reshaped. The name Troy Donahue now stands as both myth and man, a reminder of how Hollywood's brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows. Richard Chase. By the mid-1960s, Troy Donahue was no longer the fresh-faced discovery. He was a commodity. His blonde charm had already filled studio coffers, but now executives wanted to tighten their grip. Enter Richard Chase, a powerful producer, known more for his iron-fisted contracts than his creativity. Insiders whispered that Chase had a keen eye for young men, with a certain look, and Donahue fit the mold perfectly. The meeting was almost staged, a cocktail party at the Beverly Hills Hotel, with agents floating like sharks and starlets gliding past in sequins. Donahue was introduced as if by accident. Chase clasped his shoulder, leaned in close, and whispered something that reportedly made Donahue's cheeks flush. Within a week, Chase had arranged for Troy to discuss scripts in his office after hours. Secrecy here wasn't about affection, it was about survival. Donahue would arrive through a back entrance, ushered in by a secretary who looked the other way. According to a Paramount publicist, everyone knew when Troy was in that office, the phone went mysteriously unanswered. This was not the tender kind of love he'd found before. This was a transaction, power traded for protection, affection for advancement. The inciting incident came when Donahue tried to resist. He skipped a scheduled meeting, claiming illness. The next day, his name vanished from a tentative cast list for a major production. The message was unmistakable. If he didn't play by Chase's rules, his career could evaporate overnight. Escalation followed. Confidential whispers reached the ears of Hedda Hopper, who allegedly had a draft column suggesting that Donahue's charm was too evenly distributed across Hollywood's parties. The piece never ran, thanks to Chase's intervention, but the price was steep. Troy was bound even tighter, forced, into staged romances that made headlines. A well-timed engagement here, a hurried divorce there. The public saw a man unlucky in love. Insiders saw a man trapped in shadows. The consequence was corrosive. Donahue's confidence faltered, his performances stiffened. The boyish innocence that once lit the screen now carried a haunted edge. Friends whispered he drank more heavily, laughed less often. And the chapter closes with one devastating line. In Hollywood, the most dangerous love was not the one you hid, but the one someone else could expose. David Allen. Not every connection was about passion. Some were about refuge. David Allen, a fellow actor whose career never quite reached the heights of Donahue's, entered his life quietly, through the back door of friendship. They met at a studio gym, sharing cigarettes in the parking lot, joking about the absurdity of being molded into commodities. Unlike Michael Reed or Richard Chase, David didn't demand thrills or power. He offered something simpler, companionship. They would drive out to Malibu, sit by the water with beers, and talk about what they couldn't say anywhere else. According to industry whispers, David was the only one who ever told Troy, "You don't have to be anyone else when you're with me." The logistics of secrecy were strangely ordinary. They shared rides to distant parties, deliberately arriving half an hour apart. At one gathering in the Hollywood Hills, they reportedly staged a loud argument in front of guests, then slipped away separately, reconvening at a diner across town. It was a game they played for safety, but beneath it lay a genuine bond. The inciting incident was almost invisible, a photograph, one grainy black and white image, taken at a beach party, showing Donahue laughing with David in a way that suggested more than friendship. The photo never made it to the press. A studio fixer reportedly paid handsomely to have the negative destroyed, but the scare was enough. Escalation came not from the outside, but within. David grew tired of living in shadows. He wanted something real, something public. But for Donahue, the cost was unthinkable. One night, after a heated argument in Donahue's apartment, David walked out. He didn't return. Some said he fled Hollywood entirely. Others claimed he stayed, drifting into supporting roles until he vanished from the screen altogether. The consequence for Troy was silence. For years afterward, he would never speak David's name. Friends noticed he grew quieter, more withdrawn, as if one piece of him had walked out the door with that man and never come back. The closing line writes itself. In a city built on scripts, the cruelest twist was watching a friend become a ghost. The blackmail letter. By the late 1960s, Troy Donahue was fighting not just for roles but for survival in an industry that had begun shifting toward grittier, more rebellious stars. The clean-cut blonde archetype was fading, and into that fragile moment arrived the most dangerous chapter of all, a letter. Industry whispers say it began as an accident. A lover, angry at being dismissed, wrote down his frustration in detail. The note contained times, places, names, and was addressed to Donahue directly. Somewhere along the way, the letter slipped into the wrong hands. According to a Warner Brothers production assistant, the envelope was intercepted by a man known for trading gossip to tabloids. Suddenly, Donahue found himself at the mercy of a shadow network. A phone call allegedly came one night. Pay, or the story runs. For days, he lived in terror. The ring on his dresser, the phone left off the hook. These motifs now felt less like romance and more like evidence. Secrecy gave way to desperation. Studio fixers became involved, men in suits who specialized in bearing trouble. They reportedly arranged a payoff, quiet and swift. But the cost to Donahue was steep. From then on, every knock at the door felt like another threat. Every stranger's glance in Musso and Frank's seemed to hold accusation. The inciting incident wasn't the letter itself. It was Donahue realizing how little control he had. His own private life had become a weapon, something anyone could use to break him. The escalation was internal, a reliance on alcohol, a visible decline in confidence on screen. The once effortless star now stumbled through lines, haunted by the thought of exposure. The consequence was predictable. Roles dried up. The studios, already shifting away from the glossy idols of the 1950s, quietly distanced themselves. Donahue wasn't blacklisted outright, but he was no longer safe to cast. The letter was destroyed, but the fear it created never left him. The public mask. Even as his private life grew more perilous, the machinery of Hollywood worked overtime to maintain the illusion. Staged romances became Donahue's armor, his public mask. The names of young starlets were rotated beside his in headlines, each new photograph a carefully orchestrated cover story. One of the most famous stunts took place at Chasen's, where Donahue was caught holding hands with a singer just breaking into films. The photographs hit every gossip column the following week, but insiders at the restaurant remembered differently. The two barely spoke, laughing only when the flashbulbs went off. Another arrangement was even more elaborate. A brief engagement, announced in photoplay, with glowing headlines, reportedly lasted only weeks. The marriage never happened, but the story did its job. It silenced the latest round of whispers. According to one publicist, those covers weren't about love. They were about insurance. The inciting incident of this chapter was a near disaster. At a rap party in Malibu, Donahue was reportedly spotted sneaking away with a man known in the industry for similar proclivities. The sighting never made the press, but the studio scrambled. Within 48 hours, Troy appeared, arm in arm with a popular actress at the Coconut Grove, smiling for photographers as if nothing had happened. Escalation came from the tabloids themselves. Confidential had already published devastating exposés on other stars. Every time the magazine hinted at unnamed blonde idols with unconventional habits, Donahue lived in dread. The fixers worked overtime, planting counter stories, leaking tidbits about rival actors to keep the spotlight away. The consequence was exhaustion. Donahue's life became a balancing act. Pretend romances by day, hidden meetings by night, endless fear in between. He once told a confidant, according to later memoirs, "I don't know who I am anymore, the man in the pictures or the man who runs when the lights go out." The mask protected him, but it also erased him. The last lover. By the 1970s, Troy Donahue's golden glow had dimmed. The studios no longer pushed him as their poster child. New idols had taken his place. Yet even in decline, he found one last companion. Insiders whispered about a younger stage actor, unnamed in the records, his face never caught in publicity stills, who appeared briefly in Donahue's orbit. This wasn't a grand romance nor a headline-worthy scandal. It was quieter, marked by dinners in dimly lit restaurants, walks along deserted beaches, and long drives with the radio turned low. According to a bartender in West Hollywood, the two would sometimes slip into the back booth, speaking in whispers, always leaving separately. The inciting incident came when the younger man received a small role in a television pilot. Producers quickly noticed Donahue's attentiveness, his late-night visits to the studio lot. The gossip swelled. Was the fallen idol nurturing a protege or something more? The whispers reached the wrong ears. Donahue pulled away. Escalation didn't come in the form of blackmail this time, but resignation. Donahue no longer had the energy to fight the machinery of cover-ups. He let the younger man drift away. Their friendship ended without confrontation, without a scene, just silence. The consequence was finality. By the end of the decade, Donahue's private world was one of solitude. He still had friends, still worked sporadically, but the golden boy who once burned with secret passion now lived in the twilight of memory. Love in the shadows had kept him alive, but in the end, it also left him alone. To understand Donahue's secret life, one must understand Hollywood itself. The studios of the 1950s and 1960s were empires of control. Contracts included morality clauses so strict that even rumors of unconventional behavior could end a career. A smile too warm at the wrong party, a letter left on the wrong desk. These could destroy a man's livelihood. Publicists acted as shadow warriors. Warner Brothers alone reportedly employed entire teams whose job was to plant stories in gossip magazines like Photoplay and Modern Screen. If whispers grew too strong, Luella Parsons or Hedda Hopper might be fed a different morsel. A scandal about a rival star, a fake engagement, a drunken night stage for photographs. Fixers played their part too. One former MGM agent, speaking years later, claimed, "We weren't protecting morality, we were protecting money. If Troy Donahue was seen with a male companion, a fixer might pay off a photographer, destroy a negative, or create a counter-narrative before the presses rolled. And magazines like Confidential hovered like vultures. They prided themselves on scandal, hinting at secrets without always naming names. Donahue's blonde image fit their favorite archetype, the golden boy with hidden shadows. That the magazine never published a full exposé about him was not luck, it was strategy. Studios negotiated, traded, sometimes even paid to keep his name clean. The machinery was relentless, but also fragile. A single slip, one unpaid blackmailer, one rogue photographer, could have undone it all. Among the fragments of Donahue's legacy, one item has lingered in whispers: a photograph. Industry lore describes it as a Polaroid, slightly faded, showing Donahue in a Malibu bungalow, laughing with another man. The picture, reportedly tucked inside a stack of magazines, surfaced decades later in a private estate sale. No one knows for certain if the image was genuine. Some claim it was destroyed by collectors. Others say it remains locked in a filing cabinet, its existence known only to a handful of archivists. But the tactile detail of the story is irresistible. The Polaroid edges curling with age, the ink on the back smudged, the ghost of a moment caught in time. Whether real or imagined, the photograph represents more than evidence. It embodies the entire dilemma of Troy Donahue's life, a truth lived fully in shadows, preserved only in fragments that could never be shared publicly. As the years passed, Donahue's career waned. He struggled with alcohol, endured failed marriages, and watched his star fade from marquee to memory. Yet even in decline, he carried himself with a strange dignity. Friends recall that he rarely spoke of the past, as if the very act of remembering risked breaking the fragile armor he had built. In later interviews, Donahue acknowledged his struggles, though never directly addressing the whispers of his private life. "I had my battles," he once said, "but I lived." To those who knew him, This was as close as he came to confession. His obituary painted him as a fallen idol, a man who embodied a moment in Hollywood history but couldn't survive the changes that followed. Yet beneath the polished lines, insiders understood the deeper story, the cost of a name, the toll of love in the shadows. Modern audiences may look back and see only the glossy posters, the surfer boy in CinemaScope. But to understand Troy Donahue fully is to see both the light and the shadow. His life was not just about fame, it was about survival in a world that punished authenticity. The phone off its hook, the gold ring left on a dresser, love in the shadows, and the cost of a name. Troy Donahue's story is more than the tale of a Hollywood heartthrob. It is a reminder of the fragile balance between image and identity, of the heavy price paid when love must remain hidden. Behind the billboards, behind the fan magazine covers, there was a man who wanted what everyone wants: connection, truth, freedom. Yet in old Hollywood, freedom was the one luxury stars could not afford. Donahue's secret romances, his silences, his survival, all are pieces of a legacy that still echoes today. His life forces us to ask, how many dreams were built on shadows? How many names carried a cost too high to bear? If you found this journey through Hollywood's hidden history illuminating, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Because the past still has secrets, and we're here to uncover them.